Hello everybody. Today we are going to I think it's recording, okay. Today we're going to go through chapter 3 lesson 6 and we're going to talk about writing linear equations. So what that means is we'll be given a graph or a situation and we need to write a linear equation for that. Previous to this we've been talking about what a linear equation is and then how to graph a linear equation. So this is kind of how we go backwards in a sense. So today we're going to learn another form of a linear equation. So far we've learned slope-intercept. I'll abbreviate here slope-intercept, which is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. We also talked a little bit about standard form, which is pretty easy to graph using our x and y intercepts using the cover-up method, and that is ax plus by equals c. And today we're going to add a third form, which is called point-slope form. So just like slope-intercept form, we needed the slope and the y-intercept to write. Point-slope form, you need a point and the slope in order to write that. So here is point-slope form. It's y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. So now it's very important to understand because it can get confusing with the different y's and x's. Okay, x sub 1 and y sub 1 are your coordinates of your point, okay, from the point slope form, and then obviously m is your slope. Those are the only three things you need to plug in. The y and the x stay the same. Okay, the y and the x will always stay y and x. It's only y sub 1 and x sub 1 that you plug into, and m. Okay, those are the only things you need to plug in into the point slope form. Okay, so x sub 1 and y sub 1 are the coordinates of the given point, and then m is your slope, just like it always has been. So you can write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form when you know the slope and the y-intercept. You can write an equation of a line in point-slope form when you are given the slope and the coordinates of a point on the line that is not the y-intercept. So over here it says slope. The point-slope form of a linear equation is tied directly to the definition of slope. I could go through and show you how that all works, but in the interest of time, I will not. Okay, but if I'm gone from class or you see me in person, feel free to ask me, and I would love to go through it with you. But anyway, that's where we end up at this equation as we use the definition of slope. So moving forward, let's take some examples and see how this works. Example number 1, write an equation in point-slope form for the line that passes through -2, 3 with a slope of 4. So remember, I always like to write down the general form of the equation I'm using because it helps me remember what it is. So it's point-slope form, so that is y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. Okay? So really, all I have to do is piece out what they've given me and plug it in. So I'm given the point -2, 3. As we know, every ordered pair is x, y. So since this is my first point, this is x sub 1, and this is y sub 1. Okay, so that's where I'm going to plug those in. And my slope, which I know is abbreviated m, is 4. So really all I do is plug these in. Y minus a positive 3 equals 4 times the quantity of x. Now, it's important to note, in the general form, this is a minus sign. So x minus x sub 1. So watch what happens here when I plug in a -2. I have minus a -2. Now, this is a little messy or a little confusing the way it's written, so we want to simplify that a little bit. If I subtract a negative, that is exactly the same as adding a positive. So I'm going to rewrite it as y minus 3 equals 4 times x plus 2. Okay, so now my equation is in point-slope form. That is my answer. Y minus 3 equals 4 times the quantity x plus 2. So now it says, Write the slope-intercept form of the equation from example number 1. So again, now I'm working in slope-intercept form. As we all recall, slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. Okay, y equals mx plus b. So if I start here in y minus 3 equals 4 times the quantity x plus 2, my goal is to end up in this form. Okay, that's my goal. So there's really only 2 steps to this. Okay, step number 1, distribute. Okay, so let me write it over here. 1, distribute. Step number 1, distribute. So I take this 4 and I multiply it by the x and I multiply it by the 2. And I end up at y minus 3 is equal to 4x plus 8. The second step then is get y by itself or solve for y. Solve for y. So in order to get y by itself, I need to add 3. Now, a common mistake that I see a lot of times is students will try to add 3 to this 4x, but remember our definition of like terms. In order to be like terms, you have to have the exact same variable. This has an x, this does not. So the only thing I can add this 3 to is the 8, because it also does not have an x. These cancel, I'm left with y is equal to 4x plus 11. Now I am in y equals mx plus b form, so I know I'm done. Go ahead and try A under the Got It section on your own, and I will be back in a minute to walk you through it. So you should be back from pausing the video and trying A. Let's go through it. So it says write the equation in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. Okay, for the line that passes through -1, 2 and has a slope of -1/2. Okay, so I'm going to start with point-slope form because I'm given a point and I'm given the slope. So it only makes sense that I start with point-slope form. Point-slope form again is y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. Okay, so if I'm given the point -1, 2, this is the x coordinate, so that would be x sub 1. Here is the y coordinate, so that would be y sub 1. My slope I know is always abbreviated with m, so m equals -1/2. All I need to do now is plug those in. I'm left with y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 times x minus a -1. And again, I'm going to rewrite that. Now, I fully expect after probably one assignment you folks will realize when you plug in a negative, it's always going to turn positive, and you're just going to write x plus 1, and that is perfectly all right. So here is my equation now. It's written in point-slope form. Y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 times the quantity x plus 1. So there's half my answer. Now I need to convert that into slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So that's my goal. That's where I want to end up. Remember my 2 steps. Distribute and solve for y. So I'll rewrite it down here. Y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 x plus 1. Oops. And I need my parentheses here, otherwise I'm not going to be able to distribute. So I distribute the -1/2 to x and to 1. Y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 x. Now a -1/2 times 1, well, that's just a -1/2. So I have y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 x minus 1/2. In order to get y by itself now, in order to solve for y, I need to add 2. Again, I can only add the 2 to the -1/2 because the -1/2 x has an x, therefore they are not like terms. So finally I end up here at y equals -1/2 x, and if I have a -1/2 plus 2, I end up at a positive 1 1/2. Now you could write that as 1.5. You could also write it as 3/2. I don't really have a preference as to which one. So y equals -1/2 x plus 1 1/2. That is in y equals mx plus b form. So I am done. Moving on, here is a little bit of a flow chart, a cheat sheet, if you will, that'll help you on writing linear equations. So if you're given a slope and a point, okay, it says substitute the slope m and the coordinates of the point in for y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity x minus x sub 1, which would be your point slope form. So pretty much if you're given a point and the slope, use point slope form. It's pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes it helps to have it all written out. The next one, from the slope and the y-intercept. Well, if you're given the slope and the y-intercept, then you want to use slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Now, if we continue down and you're given a graph, it says find the y-intercept b and the slope from the graph and use slope-intercept form. It's usually the easiest way. Now, if you're given 2 points on the graph, one thing you can do is use the coordinates of the point to find the slope, then substitute the slope and the coordinates of one of the points into point slope form. So you would use your slope formula, which is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1 to find your slope, and then you would just use your x sub 1 and y sub 1 in the point slope form. And then lastly, from a table, again, you'd probably just take the 2 points and do the exact same thing as you did from 2 points, because that's essentially what a table is a collection of points. So you just select 2 of them and do what you did from above. So the form you use to write a linear equation is based on the information you are given. So you need to analyze what you have and figure out what you can make from it. So example number 3, write an equation in point slope form and slope intercept form for the line that passes through 8, 1 and negative 2, 9. So again, if we were to look back at that sheet, that would tell us to use point slope form first. Okay. But in order to use point slope form, I have to know the slope. So if I'm given 2 points and I need to know the slope, I use my slope formula. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Yeah. Okay. So if I label my points, this is my first point, so I'm going to label it x sub 1, y sub 1. This is my second point, x sub 2, y sub 2. Plug them in. 9 minus 1 over negative 2 minus 8. 9 minus 1 is 8. Negative 2 minus 8 more is a negative 10. If you reduce this down, divide by 2, you get negative 4/5. So that is my slope. Okay, so now I have enough information to write my point slope form equation, because I know the slope, I just found it, and I know a point. In fact, I know 2 of the points. I'm just going to use the first point because they're already labeled x sub 1, y sub 1. So point slope form, y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. So here's x sub 1, here's y sub 1, and here is m. I have everything I need. So y minus 1 equals negative 4/5 times x minus 8. Okay, so here's half of my problem already done. I've written it in point slope form. Now I need to write it in slope intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So again, I follow those 2 steps to distribute and solve for y. Let's see, let me need a little more room here. Y minus 1 is equal to negative 4/5 times x minus 8. If I distribute here, I get y minus 1 is equal to negative 4/5 x. Now if I take negative 4/5 times 8, I can't really reduce anything with the 5. Okay, so a trick I like to do is just leave the denominator the same and just multiply the top. Okay, so negative times a negative is a positive. So 4 times 8 is 32. So really what I have is positive 32 over 5. And I generally like to leave that until I am done with the entire problem. It's just easier to work with, in my opinion. So here I need to solve for y, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Okay. When I do that, I have, let me bring it up over here. y equals negative 4/5 x. Now, if I have 32 over 5 and I'm adding 1, 1 can be written as 5 over 5. So 32 fifths plus 5 fifths is going to be 37 fifths. Now, you can rewrite that as an improper fraction, which would be 7 2/5, or not an improper fraction, it is an improper fraction, a mixed number as 7 2/5, or you could write it as a decimal, which would be 7.4, or you can just feel free to leave it as 37 fifths. They are all the same. It does not really matter what you have, because it is written in slope-intercept form. That's what the problem asked me to do. I am done. So go ahead and try C and D on your own. I'll be back in a minute to go through those with you. So we should be back from trying C and D. Let's go through them. I'll try to be as quick as I can, but still explain some stuff. So first thing, we want to find our slope when we're given 2 points. So we want to label our points and find our slope. So m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Negative 3 minus 0 is negative 3. 6 minus 3 is 3. Negative 3 over 3, that's negative 1. So I know my slope is 1. I know x sub 1 and y sub 1. So now I plug them in to y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. Y minus 0 equals negative 1 times x minus 3. Okay, so there is my equation in slope-intercept form. I'm sorry, point-slope form, and now I need it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. And this one really only takes one step to solve, and here's why. Y minus 0, well, that's just y. So really, to start with, I have y equals negative 1 times x minus 3. So all I need to do is distribute this, and I'll have my answer. So in slope-intercept form, I have y equals negative x plus 3. And that is my answer. Over here for D, we repeat the process. Find my slope first. So x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Slope equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Negative 10 minus 2 more is negative 12. Here I need to add the opposite, so minus a negative is like plus a positive. So negative 12 over 6 is a negative 2. That is my slope. I already know x sub 1 and y sub 1, so I can feel free to use the point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. Plug them in. Y minus 2 is equal to negative 2 times x plus 1, because it is a negative and a negative. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it positive. That is half of my answer. Now to convert it into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Follow my 2 steps. Distribute and solve for y. So here I have y minus 2 equals negative 2 times x plus 1. Distribute. Y minus 2 is equal to negative 2x minus 2. So here if I add 2 to both sides to get y by itself, these 2's cancel out, these 2's cancel out, so I'm left with y equals negative 2x. Okay, y equals negative 2x. So you can leave it like this. This would be considered to be slope-intercept form. But if you run across a problem like this, you need to remember, what is your y-intercept? Well, your y-intercept would be 0. So really it'd be y equals negative 2x plus 0. But this is written in slope-intercept form, so it is good. Moving on, I think we have one more example, a real-life example here, or a word problem anyway. So the cost of assistance dog training sessions is shown in the table. Write an equation in point-slope form to represent the cost y of attending X dog training sessions. Okay, so really, even though we are given a table, really these are 2 points, X and Y. Okay, so you can make the 2 points 5 comma 165 and 10 comma 290. So it's essentially the exact same process as we did before, except now we're only looking for point slope form. We don't need to go the extra step and convert it into slope intercept. Label your points: x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Find your slope. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. On the bottom, we'll have 5. On top, just let me check my math here. 290 minus 165 is 125. 125 divided by 5 is 25. So my slope is 25. I have my slope. I have m. I have x sub 1 and y sub 1. Go ahead and write your equation. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. Plug them in. Y minus 165 equals 25 times x minus 5. I have my equation in point slope form. That's all it asks for. I am done. So go ahead and try this last one. It is letter E on your own. Pause the video and I'll be back in a minute to go through that one with you. So we should be back from trying E on our own. It is essentially the exact same as the other one. The cost for making spirit buttons is shown in the table. Write an equation in point slope form to represent the cost y of making x buttons. So this is x, this is y. I just make my 2 points, 100 comma 25 and 150 comma 35. Label the points: x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Find the slope. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. 35 minus 25 is 10. 150 minus 100 is 50. 10 over 50 reduces down to 1/5. That is my slope. I know my slope. I know x sub 1 and y sub 1. Plug them in. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. Y minus 25 is equal to 1/5 times x minus 100. Now if I take a look at my problem, it says write it in point slope form. That's what I have. I'm done. So using point slope form is really just another tool that we have when we're talking about linear equations. So based on the information that we have, we want to use the most appropriate form, whether it's point slope form or slope intercept form. Now, the only real time I think we would use a standard form is if we are given a real life word problem type situation where it is very easy to write it in standard form. Other than that, if we're given a table or a graph or 2 points or anything like that, it's always much easier to use point slope or slope intercept form. So with that, here is the assignment. Choose the one that is most appropriate for you. If you've been struggling, do red. Kind of somewhere in the middle, do yellow. And if you understood everything perfectly, go ahead and do green. Alrighty, thank you.